Tēnā katoa koutou tātou I roto I tēnei pō. Kia ora everybody, Jay Wilson here from Te Pai Pai Waho, connecting to you tonight from Te Tairawhiti and linking to a number of platforms. As I mihi to you all tonight, and we are discussing identity number 7, and specifically about whether we should write about our identity or not. Hoi anō, e mii ana ki a koutou e te iwi, e tangi ana ki ngā mate, kei te uri a Wikitoria, e te kuini iri hāpiti, e moe. A koa ngā tūkinotanga, e mii ana ki tō ware, no reire e kui, e moe, me ngā mate katoa. Tērā ōku I te wiki koa I pātu nei, koutou ki koutou, tātou ngā mauetangai o me I nei e tangi nei I roto I tēnei pō, tēnā koutou, kia ora katoa tātou. E tū e te wiki o te reo Māori. E tū rā, me te mātou tone, rima te koutou ki muri, I tuku atu I te peti ana, kia o ka manatia te reo Māori ki roto I tēnei wenua Māori. Nā reira, e tū e te wiki o te reo Māori, e tū e te pēti ana I tō rā wānau rima tekau, o tino I am hana e tū me ngā kaupapa katoa e āngai puana ki tō tātou reo o te rā kia mauru Māori, e tū mai rā. Wow, 50 years since the Māori language petition was submitted to Parliament. And this week, Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori, the Māori Language Week, has been something going on for some decades now, which recognises when the petition was submitted. And then in addition to that, in more recent times, we've had Mahuru Māori, which has taken off phenomenally, and fragility continues to challenge us. But isn't that a great thing? That it's making people uncomfortable, more so that people can question and then have the debate, even though it can be extremely tiresome. But I just want to celebrate Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori, Mahuru Māori, for what they are and what they're doing to help transform us. Because any transformation has pain. It's no different to growth pains. Also here as part of a rōpū, Masters of Māori and Indigenous Leadership, travelling around the country as we decided not to go overseas, but to do another domestic haerenga. So here in Gisborne and travelling along the coast to Pōneke and then over to Christchurch next week. Nā reire me iana, let's get into our kaupapa. Today while in Gisborne, we got to go to a few places and it conjured up the idea, well, should we be writing about our identity? And I think what I want to talk about is, yes, the train ride was awesome, Kaz. Should we be writing about our identity? We have always written about our identity. Whether it's written or books or not is another story. And I think the answer is a yes, yes, and policy, rather than an either or. I think it's all about and it's all about yes, yes. So no matter what, absolutely yes, we should be inscribing our stories back in the land where those stories come from. Because that helps to foster and build identity. But also it's important to remember that identity comes with layers, and those layers have different stories. And one of the kai kōrero, we had 3 different kai kōrero today as part of our Masters haerenga. One was sharing the story about reviving the stories of Tūranga Nui Ākiwa next to the phallic symbol that is at Cook's Landing. And then another one about maintaining identity in the 3 iterations of Te Poho o Rawiri, And then finally, utilizing artistic license to enter into different spaces while being a Wairoa ninja and warrior to penetrate vibration, to heal people. So those were the three different kaupapa we got to hear from today. And it made me think, absolutely, we should be writing about our identity, but not just putting it in books. Yes, it needs to go into the education curriculum. Yes, there need to be books written about, and there should be interpretation panels, but there should also be art, whether that's song, whether that's material art, or spoken word. The most important thing is that stories should be told, because as stories are told, it reminds us of identity. It reminds us of the different layers that are connected to identity. But more than that, it can inspire us. It can inspire us to remember. It can inspire us to be better people. And if I think about songs, I've made a conscious effort over the last 20 odd years that whenever there's an eruption, a laha, or something else, I always compose something. Why? Because that's where I'm from Ruapehu. And whenever koro grumbles, I compose something so that we're still utilizing an ancestral tool to record, so that we maintain it in one way. But then I also play with other things, whether that's online here, or video, or animation, or books, or writing of some other sort. So that's always an and. Because what we have to do is, it only takes one generation to lose anything, but it takes 3 generations to grow it again, to rebuild it again, and bring it into consciousness. And so I use multiple media to share stories, to ensure that it can touch as many people as possible. Because not everybody's going to read, not everybody's going to get the art, not everybody's going to like the song. But it's really important, because we have to always share and, because as I was talking about layers earlier, cultures all around the world build on someone else's special places. And, pagan sites, Christians often built on pagan sites. I know our own people, to protect wāhi tapu, they then created urupa at those wāhi tapu, so in the hope that a cemetery would be protected. In addition to that, whenever they wanted land protected, they created more urupa in the hope that things would be protected. And what are those things? Those things are called culture. Those things are called identity. And the more that we do different things, and that we assess the incoming values of the colonizer or whoever, we adapt our culture to ensure that identity is not lost. And so whether that's song, whether that's material art, whether it's written in books, or whether it's tā moko, moko, whether it's moko, the ability to ensure that our stories are continued with the various layers are essential, so that we don't lose identity. So the question I started off with, should we write about identity? Absolutely. And I think the role of artisans is essential. And I love to tell stories. I love to write songs, and so that's my form of keeping identity alive. I think we've also got another component to think about, And there's a whole lot of kōrero about stars and moon and sun and the celestial beings in the heavens, which is amazing kōrero. It's actually beautiful kōrero. But then there are also changes, and I was listening to the kawe. I'm in the East Coast. I better call it the East Coast word, the koikoia. I was listening to the koikoia this afternoon, and it's the first time I've heard it this year. And things are changing. And though the stars don't change, the other natural indicators are changing. And so how do we adapt and or compose new methods of storytelling and encoding understandings of natural order so that they apply with the influence of climate change? And I've been doing some recordings for over 10 years now, and I think there are some constants that have happened, and then continuous change as well. But those constants that have changed have probably fashioned up enough to now record it. And so we've got to record it in both a encoded manner through poetry, whether that's through song, through karakia, through tauparapara, etc., as well as writing about it in books, in comics, in animations, and whatever else, so that we're still doing tupuna stuff in a modern context. And there was one thing I noticed today, which I really loved at the at Puhikai Iti at Cook's Landing, is the art forms that were there. There was a tree planted right by the tukutuku. It's a kōwhai tree. And the artist, he said, and there's our clock. And what I love about that is that they had planted a kōwhai tree which links to the central piece. And so that's another way of writing, as long as we continue the stories. That's another way of writing, is where you have a tree, a living being, like a rako, next to these metal and rope tukutuku panels, and then the central metal piece of art, which connects to a big whale, and that the whales would start to migrate. And so, without asking the question, I know that's got to do with the change of season and the spring equinox, which signals the return. And I heard the bird, the kawekawea, the koikoia, which is the return of those manu from northwestern part of Polynesia, but also that those manu lead the path for them, the ika, to come, and as they come, they take us to other stories, and that kōwhai connects it all. So, there are many ways to write about our identity, and sometimes it's written in black and white language. Other times it's written in creative means where it's encoded. I've just got a question here. And it eventually became part of theirs, and for part of the identity. Yes, colonizers did these things to our tupuna, but gospel itself is a constant, same today, yesterday. Well, yeah. So there's a question. I think I'll show it. Yeah, there's a question there, and I have nothing against colonization. I have nothing against Christianity. What I am mindful of is it's only 180 years of our history, and we will continue. Many will continue to carry it on, and some will choose not to. And I think the most important thing is that everybody respects whatever your beliefs might be, and that it's not a competition. I think there are many ways that my own tupuna, I come from a prophetic movement, and when they thought about this idea of te karaiti, the risen Christ, they focused in on how that connected to the stories that they already had, and then what could they find parallels with so that it could work for them in their time. And I think we're going to continue to do that no matter what. As new things come in, we will continue to find parallels to make it work for our time. And there will be some who will want to follow by the word and argue about, no, you've got to do it this way, you've got to do that way. What's more important is that we live well lives and use what's going to help us to live well lives and remember layers of stories rather than just one blanket. But there are different layers, and I think wearing the different layers will take us to a better place. So ka te ake. I think that's it for tonight. It's been a long day. Yes, Val, I had a great trip on the train this morning to go to Auckland, and it was really nice to be back on the train. Nā reira, e mihi kaua tu ana. By the time I'm back on next week, we would have had the funeral for Queen Elizabeth, which will be... I'm one of these people who loves looking at pageantry of any culture. And so I'll be intrigued to see what happens over the next few days and then at the tangi. Ka te ake, e te iwi. Koutou o te motu tēnei e mii kau atu ana ki koutou o tira ki tātou I roto I tēnei wiki te wiki o te reo Māori. Kei te pakinga o te mutu te oro o tō tātou reo. Nā reira, kōrerotia tō tātou reo. Kia ora, tēnā koutou, rire, rire au, pai mārire.